3, 2, 1. All right, we are live here. BRUNO GAMA here, Brazilian Health Nuts, and we are back with one more interview here on the show. And today I'm actually very excited because it's something that I haven't talked about on the show much of. We're going to be having Shawn Wells. He's an expert into the supplementation. He's an expert into a lot of things actually, but today we're actually gonna just be focusing on supplements because, like I said before, it's something that we haven't touched on, and I believe a lot of people have a lot of questions about, and it's something very important here to discuss. And so, Shawn, are you here? Are you live here with us?
I am. I'm here. I'm ready.
Awesome. Cool. So this is live, guys. By the way, if you're listening to the replay, that's all right. You can also always go and ask us questions later on. But if you're here live, make sure you ask your questions because we can answer you during this interview. So how are you doing, Shawn?
Things are great. I'm on your show, so
awesome.
Life is good.
Awesome, man. So can you just start by sharing a little bit about your background? How did you get into the supplementation business?
Sure. So I've always been passionate about supplements. My mom really got me interested in supplements. Like even as far back as the 70s, she was selling a company called Shackley. It's a European company, and she had like the tackle box, of all these different, vitamin E, and it was called Vital E was their multivitamin, and she had vitamin C, which, at the time, like there was the orthomolecular dosing with Linus Pauling about the power of vitamin C. And so that really got me interested in it over, just taking drugs or just going to the doctor. Like I believed in the power of nutrition from very early on, thanks to her. And I actually went to business school at a school called Babson. It was the #1 business specialty school in the country, and I thought I was going to be, something big in the business world. I took marketing, which has helped a lot in my current endeavors. But I was about in my junior year, and I was getting a physical at a doctor, and I was telling him about I was taking creatine, and it was like this game changer for me. And I was reading this book called Optimum Sports Nutrition from Dr. Michael Colgan. And he talks about like GH cocktails by like using different amino acids and all these things. And he was testing his athletes with different blood levels and just doing tests like before anyone else of vitamins and amino acids and minerals. And I was like, man, this stuff is so cool. And creatine was just so amazing for me. And I was telling this doctor, I was like, man, it'd be so cool to do this stuff for a living. I don't know why I was bringing it up. And maybe just because he was medical and he had some kind of background in nutrition, maybe not, but, you hope that they do. And I was telling him, but, I'm going to business school and I'm just going to go on to, some job like, with Anderson Consulting or, Price Waterhouse or whatever. And he told me, he's like, well, why don't you just be happy? He's like, and he drew out this lifeline for me, because I was 20 years old at the time, and he showed this lifeline going out to 80 or 100. And then he pointed to, like this whole gamut of age between 20 and 80. And he's like, you see all this? Why don't you just be happy? If this is what you're passionate about. And this stranger totally changed my life path, because everyone else in my life was saying, you can't go back to school. You need to go get a job. You need to enter the real world. Stop dreaming. Stop messing around. Go make some money and pay off your debt from, what's been accruing at college. And I took this guy's advice, this complete stranger, and I decided to go back to school. I couldn't even get help. So I put it all on a credit card, and it was just to get postgraduate. I needed like 2 years of postgraduate, like chemistry, biology, biochemistry, all this stuff to even get into a master's program. And I knocked all that out in a few years, and I got my master's in nutritional biochemistry at Chapel Hill. I then got my RD certification after taking that licensure exam, and I worked clinically for about a decade. But during that time, I was working with patients and certainly prescribing some things. But during that time, I was on bodybuilding.com, a very big forum, and I started becoming an expert, a guru of sorts, and answering a lot of people's questions. And then I started becoming a rep for some companies on there, and then doing marketing write-ups, and then doing formulations. And then I got an offer from yeah, I know, it's crazy. And then I got an offer from this company, Dymatize, and they said, we'd like for you to be our director of R&D and do all of our formulations. And I said, yes, that sounds very cool.
You also went to as the speaker at the International Society of Sports Nutrition in Brazil, right? How was that experience?
I did. Yeah, that was amazing. So I've actually been in the ISSN for about 10 years, almost since the beginning. I think I came on in like the first or second year that Joey Antonio and Doug Kalman founded. And there's just so many rock stars in the ISSN. And a few years back, I got my fellowship in the ISSN, which is a very big deal. I think there's only about 15 people maybe that have their fellowship. And then I got on in the editorial board of the journal, and then I'm on the advisory board of the ISSN. And BRUNO Falcon reached out to me, and I had already spoke at the Arnold Brazil in Rio. And he asked if I would speak at the ISSN Brazil, which was in Brasilia. And that was a huge honor. And it was extremely well.
How did you like the Brazilian food?
Oh, I mean, first off, the Brazilian steakhouses are amazing. We do have some here in Dallas. We have Texas de Brazil and Fogo de Chao.
Right.
Which actually, they're both Brazilian guys that founded them, and they started here in Dallas. So it's kind of cool. There's a little Dallas Brazil connection. But I love the food in Brazil. I love the people. One of the coolest things I love about Brazil is when I got down there, there's a trend now in the US called functional medicine. And it's different than traditional allopathic medicine, where a doctor might take some basic labs like a BMP or CMP and also get a CBC. These are kind of basic labs that doctors get. But when I talk to the nutritionistas there in Brazil, they have 100 labs, 150 labs, things like leptin they're looking at. And I mean, stuff that in America just doesn't get looked at unless you go to pay out of pocket and work with someone who's, maybe like, someone who's a very advanced anti-aging type doctor that you're paying a lot of money for. But this is not available in traditional medicine. And I love that the nutritionists in Brazil are taking this approach, and they're using supplements, and they're working with a compounding pharmacist and making unique formulas based on their labs, their needs, their diet. And it's incredible. It's very different from here. Like where RDs, I can tell you, I worked 10 years clinically. They're not taken very seriously. I mean, they're kind of the bottom rung of providers in the hospital, and it's sad.
Yeah, absolutely. So Shawn, let's get into really the specifics here. The first question that I have for you related to supplementation is, can supplements be a replacement for food?
That's a great question. I mean, first off, no. I mean, from the aspect of you need your macronutrients. You need the water content, potentially the fiber, unless you're carnivore and you're just getting butyrate in the gut. You could actually get away with no fiber potentially. But, you need you need your fat, your protein. You don't necessarily need carbohydrate. It's a tool. I mean, you can use ketones, and your body can produce glucose that it needs from glycerol, based from the fatty acids. It can make it from protein with gluconeogenesis. But all these things, you need them for energy. And then as far as the micronutrients, the minerals and vitamins, you can have a healthy diet and you can get vitamins and minerals certainly from your foods, but it's hard. It's hard depending on your budget, your access to like organic, healthy foods, fruits and vegetables, whatever. It's hard to do all that. And I think, a great multivitamin is certainly warranted. One that has coenzymated B vitamins, which means the active forms of B vitamins like methylcobalamin, 5-methyl tetrahydrofolate, P5P, things like that I like. And also the organic forms of minerals, like citrate, like a magnesium citrate versus like magnesium oxide, the inorganic version.
Yeah, I'm gonna get it a little more specifics, but before that, so in your opinion here, we can't really live like an optimal life without having to have some specific supplements into our lives nowadays in 2017 as we talk here.
Yes, absolutely. And I think, if you look at all these labs that unfortunately we don't usually pull in the United States that you pull regularly in Brazil, where you look at all the blood levels, the plasma levels of all these vitamins and minerals, you see the deficiencies. And some of these people are eating well enough, but there's issues of, like I said, like access to great food, one. Two, there can be enzymatic deficiencies where, like for example, with folate, you can have enough folate in your diet, but there's several enzymatic steps. I think there's about 4 enzymatic steps to actually get to the active form. And unless, if there's some kind of deficiency, you may not be making the active form of folate, even though you're getting enough. And so there's always deficiencies potentially. And then your exercise and your exposure to pro-oxidants and pollutants and, things like that can be an issue. And then the orthomolecular dosing that I was talking about before, which is very popular to study in Brazil. There's many courses on that. And that's orthomolecular means like that the large doses of, like, for example, with vitamin C, we know 60 milligrams is to prevent the deficiency. But what's optimal? Like it could be grams a day, which is a huge difference. So, and then what's the effect of like these large doses of vitamins or minerals? So very interesting stuff.
Gotcha. Thank you so much for answering that. What about which ones in terms of supplements here do you really think that everyone should be looking at having into the diets? Do you have like a list of your favorite ones, or it's going to be determined by the individual?
Both. I have some core favorites, and then certainly there's individual needs based on your epigenetics, based on your blood levels, based on your diet, like we talked about. But I think the core ones that I would recommend to everyone is a really potent probiotic, and that means microencapsulated strains, and it also means spore forms of probiotics so that they're protected. Probiotics are easily destroyed, easily degrade. A lot of companies say at time of manufacture because they won't even guarantee the shelf life. So you have to look for a really good probiotic that's stable and well formulated. Fish oil, there's just so much data there. I like a high DHA fish oil because DHA can be active in its own for its own purpose, but also convert to EPA. So I think that's my favorite one is a high DHA formula. And then a really good...
What do you think about in terms of cod liver oil compared to just the regular fish oil? Do you see a difference there? Do you look into that as well?
Yes, I think the sardine, anchovy, mackerel, The high EPA, DHA based fish oil is better overall. Cod liver oil is a good source of A, D, E, like the fat soluble vitamins, but I think you can get those from other sources. It's not as good in terms of the omega-3s and the EPA and DHA that really are helpful.
Gotcha.
So
Gotcha.
I would recommend
probiotic,
getting that.
probiotic, then fish oil, and
then,
which ones are you next?
Yeah, so then a multivitamin that's an active form, like I was talking about, that has the coenzymated B vitamins, the active B vitamins, and then the organic forms of the minerals that are high bioavailability. I think those are all important. So look at the doses. I would definitely not get a gummy vitamin. Those are very deficient in a number of nutrients and provide sugar, and it's just a poor form of a multivitamin. So
yeah, okay. So you just said here probiotics, fish oil, and multivitamins. So when people ask me, okay, what type of a good, because you go to the supermarket or you go to a health store or online, and there is like hundreds of brands, and from what I understand is that the regulation around supplementation, especially here in the US, is not very good. So how do we determine here about the quality of the supplement that we're going to be buying?
That's a very complicated answer. There's so much to understand, and I've done talks on supplement scams and loopholes that can be exploited, some of which you can deduce as a consumer, but many of which you can't know until you actually test the product out at a lab potentially. So what I would recommend is going with a company that's been around for a long time, that if you go on Amazon has thousands of reviews that are positive, that when you look at the label, there's full disclosure, meaning that you see the ingredient, what it's standardized to, the dose, and everything's clearly listed. There's no proprietary blends, which means you list 50 ingredients and then you say, 3,000 milligrams. Like, that's not good. You want to know that it's ginseng standardized for X percentage of ginsenosides at 150 milligrams, and that's a study-based dose, all that kind of stuff. You want full disclosure. And to me, usually less ingredients is more. I don't mind a multi-ingredient formula. Maybe it's 3, 4, 5, 6 ingredients, but like some of these formulas that have 10, 15, 20 ingredients, it starts getting very doubtful, especially if it's in a capsule, that you're going to get efficacious doses of those ingredients. So I would look for a company that's been around, that has a great reputation. There's companies like Thorne, which is about as good as it gets. You pay a premium for them, but you also know what you're getting, and it's tested.
Yeah.
Here's another thing I
just ordered some zinc from Thorne last night, actually. My zinc just finished, so I just went ahead and got some from Thorne. I love that company. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, so another thing that's important is that the full stability work has been done. So this means that if this product has a 2-year shelf life, that at 2 years, that product will still test out and meet label claim. A lot of companies formulate, at best, there's companies that don't even meet label claim at time of manufacture, but companies will at least make label claim at time of manufacture, but some of these ingredients don't have great stability. And so you need to put in overages. And you do that by doing what's called accelerated stability testing. And it takes a lot of work to figure out, okay, our product will test out 2 years from now and still meet label claim. And so good companies like Thorne, or the company I work for, like BioTrust, that I've obviously put a lot of my time and energy and knowledge into, they do that. Companies like Nordic Naturals, Jarrow, Now Foods, those are like Optimum Nutrition. Like, those are really good brands that consistently test out. Okay.
I have a question here. So we just talked about Amazon, that I just went ahead and ordered some zinc from Amazon. I think was probably 1 year and a half ago. I was listening to a podcast. I forgot his name, but he was mentioning something about how Amazon is really not regulated in terms of the supplements. It's not everything that is there is actually like true. Do you know anything about that? Have you heard about something like about Amazon in terms of supplementations?
Yeah, I mean, Amazon isn't the FDA. Amazon isn't Anvisa. You know, they're not testing out the products. But I will say, if a product has thousands of reviews, you know, certainly there can be biased reviews. If there's only 20 reviews, you might have like the company itself doing its own reviews, and it's kind of shady. But if a company has thousands of reviews for this product, it's very difficult to fool most of the consumers. And you know, if you're talking about an ingredient or a product that you can tell, like either by, you know, like with zinc. I mean, I'm sure there's people that, you know, where they tested themselves, they were deficient in zinc, they took the product, and then they went and got retested, and they're like, yep, Thorn zinc really works. You know, I mean, it's difficult to fool the consumer in that way. So they can potentially test it out like that. But Amazon has taken steps, at least they've released a few of their own products. I think it's Amazon Basics or Essentials. They have about 3 or 4 products now. And what's really cool with them is they've taken steps to help the consumer understand how their products test out with a QR code. And that QR code is on every bottle, and you can scan it with your phone, and you can actually see their lot testing results for every bottle. So that's very cool that you as the consumer get empowered with that information. I think that is going to affect the industry, and it'll start becoming something the industry adopts. That, okay, how does the consumer know this product tests out? We'll show you the results.
Yeah, Amazon is pretty amazing company. I'm not the biggest fan of like huge companies, but I have to tell you that I love Amazon. I subscribe to the buying things from them. Just the customer service is pretty amazing. Anyway, so let's move on here. Let's talk about how do you really know, in your opinion, Shawn, if the supplement that we are taking is actually working? Because I see this quite a lot. Somebody who is on a state of health, maybe some leaky gut, the digestion is not working properly, and they are just like taking all these supplements, but maybe they're just spending money, it's not really doing the work. How do you go about really understanding here if the supplements that the person is taking is actually doing something good for them?
That's a really great question, and I think it's something that's really under addressed that you bring up, is that the gut is everything. And as we move along, we're understanding that more and more. Initially, we thought about the gut for digestion. Then we thought about, oh, okay, 70 to 80% of the gut is your immunity. And then we hear about, oh, there's these neurotransmitters that are in the gut. There's GABA and serotonin and dopamine. So maybe it has something to do with your brain health. And then now we're understanding that, you know, there's the gut-brain axis, that like where the gut goes, the brain goes. And we're understanding, like with fecal microbiota transplant, where you take poop from one person and put it in another, that there's radical changes in their health. People that have C. diff, which is C. difficile, and they're literally dying, get a transplant of fecal matter from another healthy person, and within hours they're healthier. The gut is so powerful. And you bring up a great point about leaky gut. You know, I think a lot of people lack these tight junctions, and there's toxins that are leaking in to your bloodstream that really shouldn't be, and it's causing issues with inflammation and you know, GI distress and feelings of depression potentially, and all the things that come with chronic inflammation. Obesity, malabsorption of things, of course, like you're saying. So I think it's important, one, if you feel tired, if you feel GI distress, if you feel like you have chronic inflammation, these are signs that you may want to check out, your gut health. And I would see a specialist about that and get some testing done. And then once you address that, maybe then you can, go from there and experience the benefits of a good diet and supplementation and these other things. But you certainly do need to address the gut. There's good tests. A company called uBiome lets you test your gut at a fairly cheap price. There's a product I like called Elixa that you cannot get on Amazon. You have to order directly from the site. But basically, it's a 6-day course of a very potent probiotic that's maybe 10 times the strength of even the strongest probiotics you can buy. And it's kind of like the approach of taking a 6-day course of antibiotics where it just nukes your gut and you fix the gut just in 6 days. And that's all you use it for, is just 6 days, maybe once every 3 months. And that's a great product. And then from there, I would use something like, I know the one I formulated with BioTrust called ProX10, I'm pretty proud of, that does have the microencapsulated probiotics, does have the spore form that's protected, and it has a really cool prebiotic that multiplies the effects. It kills bad bacteria and helps the good bacteria grow. It's called Pre4 Pro. But that's what I'd recommend is, once you get your gut figured out, then you can get on a regimen to fix your gut using things like Elixa, ProX10, fermented foods, etc. And then maybe you can experience all the benefits of supplements and good diet and things like that.
Yeah. Right. So guys, the message that Shawn is saying is don't go ahead and just start buying all types of supplements just because you think that's going to be working. If your digestion is not working properly right now, it's going to be just a waste of money. So take care of the basic first, always do the foundation and some specific supplements here to help with your gut healing. But then after that, that's when you start to look into more specifics. But always address the foundation first. So, Shawn, what about supplements for weight loss? There is a lot of in the market. I had a friend, he was just like, oh, this I think was called Garcinia, Cambodia, something along those lines. And I'm just taking this pill and not changing anything else. That's all he was doing. So what is your take on the supplements for weight loss that's marketed for that, at least?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think I saw some research recently that based on the data that the average American goes on 8 diets a year. 8 times a year,
wow.
They're on a diet and restarting, which means they're failing 8 times a year. So it's something that most people are doing. Most people want to lose weight, figure out how to lose weight. And so it's something that people are struggling with. And we know that a lot of the food and beverage industry has made a food science of addiction, so that they literally trigger dopamine and serotonin in your brain. This is something you can look at on YouTube. There's all these food scientists that are in the business of addiction. They talk about this term called the bliss point, and it's really about addiction.
Yeah. Salt, fat, and sugar. It's a great book that 4 years ago, it's like blew my mind just what they are doing to the foods. It's easy.
Here's the thing. Check this out. When you walk into a convenience store, what do you see? It's all about addiction and impulse, right? You see colorful bottles, and all these bottles are filled with caffeine and sugar. You see all this candy right up by the register, and they're all in really bright, colorful packaging, and it's all just sugar. And then you see cigarettes and alcohol and lottery tickets. It's all about impulse addiction. The convenience store is built on addiction, and that's all it is. Mm-hmm. There's nothing like really healthy or positive in a convenience store. It's about impulse. You come in, you gas up your car, and then here comes the impulse. And so, that's very interesting to look at. But back to your question on
Yeah, back to the weight, the weight
on
loss
fat burners
supplements.
and ingredients that are helpful. I do think there are some ingredients that are helpful. I do think there's a lot of not so great ones. Maybe Garcinia could be like one that's maybe not that conclusive. Certainly a lot of the Dr. Oz ingredients have been scrutinized, but there are ingredients that I do think are good. But you do need those, with proper diet and exercise, and then they can be helpful. They can be additional from there. But certainly the lion's share of your benefit is going to be from diet and exercise and hydrating and sleeping right and getting your appetite under control, getting the addiction under control. If you're still addicted to all these foods, these junk foods, these sweets, it's going to be a battle. So, you need to break yourself of that addiction first, and then you can, add some supplements that might be of additional benefit. I like an ingredient, grains of paradise. There's an ingredient, capsaicin, that can be helpful at raising basal metabolic rate. Grains of paradise raises basal metabolic rate and increases brown adipose tissue activity, which is very interesting. That's kind of a new frontier in fat burning. There's a number of green tea extract with a decent amount of polyphenols, including EGCG. There's some decent data there. Those are some of the ingredients I like. I think CLA.
What's your take on caffeine?
Caffeine, yeah, excellent. I don't do any caffeine personally, but there is some good data on metabolic rates, on thermogenesis with caffeine. I would just be careful of when and how you use it. If you have sensitivities to it, certainly if you're impairing your sleep, that is not ideal. You're certainly not going to do yourself a favor in terms of losing fat and keeping your energy high if you're addicted to caffeine and your sleep is impaired. So I would just use it with caution, like any other stimulant.
Yeah, absolutely. What about, Shawn, multi-level marketing companies that I see almost pretty much, every day there is somebody trying to sell me some of those shakes or supplements promising the weight loss and health, and they're super good with marketing, right? Have you done a little bit of research into the shakes? I don't want to mention any names here, but you know exactly the ones I'm talking about. Have you done a little bit of research about that?
Well, yeah, I know a lot about those companies, and I think like anything, there's some really good ones, and then there's some ones that are not so great. I would probably say 80% of the industry is not so great. So you need to do your homework. You need to see if some products have been tested. But it is hard with multi-level marketing companies because there are such exaggerated claims from so many people. Even your friends that are selling them are making these crazy claims. Cures cancer, it like cures diabetes. I lost 60 pounds on it. And they're literally just making a living off of these claims, selling these products, getting a free car because of these products. But, there are some good ones out there. I think the claims are very exaggerated, but there are certainly some not so great companies out there too. And I think you just need to do your homework. But I think if anyone comes up to you making completely ridiculous claims, I would certainly be skeptical. If someone comes up to you and says, you know what, I like this product because I was able to lose an extra pound a week on a healthy diet and exercise, and it tastes great, and the ingredients are quality, I enjoy the taste, it mixes well, and everyone I put it on, it seems to get consistent results. I would be much more likely to trust someone like that than someone who says, I lost 60 pounds in 1 month, and it cured my friend's cancer, and it got my friend off of diabetes, and taking any medication. And that's when it's like, okay, this doesn't sound right. So I think
do the research.
what they're saying.
Yeah, do the research, guys. I'm actually working with a group of 20 people right now in a group setting, coaching. And one of the things that we're teaching there is just like how to read the labels. Like people have no idea anymore. So we actually have to go and teach people how to go around the supermarkets and see what should they buy or what should they avoid according to the ingredient list. Super, super important skill nowadays in the world that we live. And once they learn that, they actually can go anywhere and just be like prepare
Yeah.
because life's gonna happen. They're gonna be in a situation, right, where they're gonna be having to, wow, I have to know what I should be eating now, and then they have that skill, and they just feel empowered.
Yeah, exactly. And going back to, talking about quality brands before, one of the biggest things that I will tell you is that, is it a proprietary blend? And I largely stay away from proprietary blends. If they list a bunch of ingredients and there is no dose per ingredient, then that's when I get a little reluctant because they're not being full disclosure. It's important to see each ingredient have the standardization, the herb, the full name, its dose, and everything be disclosed versus listing a bunch of ingredients and just saying, hey, trust us. Because chances are when they list these bunch of ingredients, what happens? They're actually listed in descending mass order. So what this means is that if you look, it might have leucine or BCAAs or something that you want in it, but check and see if that ingredient is at the very end of the list. And if it's at the very end of the list, it could be 1 milligram. 1 milligram. And for leucine, you need like 3 grams or something. So if it's something like that, that's when you need to question it. And if you're not that good at kind of understanding what I'm talking about, that's when I just look for, okay, are they listing each ingredient, what it's standardized to, and then the dose? That's at least a good place to start. Because here's another thing that happens. That company has to spend 10 times as much on testing. Because when you list a bunch of ingredients and it's in a proprietary blend, you don't need to test anything. But if you list each ingredient and the dose and what it's standardized for, now you've got to do a lot of testing as that company. You need to pay a lot of money. So not only is it more information for the consumer, now the consumer can also trust that this company's doing testing.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. What about protein powders, Shawn? I know this could be just the whole podcast here, just talking about this topic. It's a big one. Summarize your the best ideas here for people who are looking for a good quality protein powder.
Yeah, absolutely. So when I was at Dymatize, Dr. Rob Wildman and I spearheaded basically outing the industry for something called protein spiking or nitrogen spiking. And what has happened for many companies out there, again, in proprietary blends, you see things like arginine, taurine, glycine, creatine in these formulas for proteins. Why? Because whey protein is expensive. And what happens is how they test for grams of protein is actually looking at nitrogen level through a Kjeldahl test. And then they do a conversion factor, nitrogen conversion factor, to figure out grams of protein. So what these companies did was manipulate this test by adding high nitrogen ingredients and saying it's part of the blend, and therefore it tests out like protein. But creatine isn't protein. And arguably these other amino acids aren't protein. So they're literally being put in there to save money and to look like protein. So I would say to you that, I would go with, again, a reputable company like an Optimum Nutrition, like a Dymatize, BioTrust, we test our stuff out, but a company that's been around a while, that has a great reputation, that doesn't have these added ingredients, the taurine, the glycine, the creatine, that are a sure sign that they're potentially nitrogen spiking. and that would be what I'd look for. As far as forms of protein, I like.
Yeah, that's a good point. I actually should have asked you this about protein. Any difference here related to whey protein, hemp, pea protein, rice? There is so many options nowadays.
Yeah.
What's your opinion about this?
Well, the vegetarian proteins, the vegan proteins that you can get certainly have benefit. All the vegan proteins are incomplete, unlike the animal sources, but that's not necessarily a problem. You can put proteins together and have complementary proteins. You just need to look at the amino acid profile. I think it's very important to make sure you're getting enough of the BCAAs, the essential amino acids, and then especially leucine to trigger muscle protein synthesis. But that's where whey is kind of king, because whey has all the amino acids. It's high in EAAs, it's high in BCAAs, and it's high in leucine. For every 25 grams of whey, you're getting about 2.8 grams of leucine and about 5.5 grams of BCAAs. So this is a good sign that you're getting enough leucine in 25 grams to trigger muscle protein synthesis, to protect lean body mass, to help with recovery, to give you enough essential amino acids to build new muscle. Whereas with the plant proteins, to get those levels, you may need to take twice as much. And there's been studies where they did that. They showed, yeah, it can be equivalent to whey, but you had to take 50 grams. So that's the problem.
You got to take much more.
Exactly. So I think, there's a good reason that whey is king. It's not the only option, but it's certainly the best option.
Yeah, ideal. If you can handle whey protein, I think that's the ideal scenario here. But if you can't, then there is other options, and you can try and see what works for your body, because everybody is unique here as well. Like some people do well with just the protein coming from the plants. Some other people can't. Like I know from personal experience here, I did like a 15 days, I think it was 15 days, just plants, like completely like vegan, right? And I didn't do so well like when I'm eating some healthy animals into my diet. So you have to test it out, see what works. Also, where are you right now in your life? Are you super stressed? Are you recovering? Are you trying to lose weight? There is all these different variations here to really determine what's going to be the best option for you right now. Always take this into consideration, guys. Make sure you're doing this for you, not just for what I say here or Shawn is saying. Always test to see if it's going to work for your body. So Shawn, do you see any big mistakes here that people are making when buying supplements?
What I'd say is probably that they're buying ingredients that have a lot of hype behind them, a lot of marketing behind them, because they're new, they're novel, no one's ever tried them before, so it sounds cool, and that's the new magic bullet. The problem is that those ingredients usually have no research, that there's no testing standard at a good lab to test them out and make sure the quality is there and the actives are there. And they are potentially dangerous at times with things like DMAA or DMBA, which is also called AMP. Some of these ingredients have been dangerous. And so they sound exciting and there's a lot of marketing hype, but the best ingredients are the ingredients that have been around a while, that have research on them, that have testing standards on them, that you can get from quality sources. And, so things like creatine that have 500 studies, things like fish oil, which has tons of studies. And, these ingredients, there's a good reason that they've been around a while and people still take them. I wouldn't be looking for the next magic bullet from some brand new company that, is going to be out of business in a year and that ingredient's going to be gone in a year. I would be looking for ingredients that we have research that shows that it works and the product you're taking has that ingredient at the right dose, in the right form, from a solid company, and that's what I would take.
Thank you. Shawn, any supplements here that you love, but like not many people know about it? Do you have any secrets here to share with us? I don't know
Uh,
if I should say secrets here. I don't really love this word, but people love to know some of the things that we do here in our personal lives, right?
yeah, you know, one of the biggest areas for me that's really interesting is nootropics. Some people call it nootropics, basically cognitive enhancers, brain boosters, if you will. I think that's a whole new area that's really exploding right now. Um, you know, how to get more from your brain, biohacking, if you will. So ingredients like acetyl L-carnitine, alpha GPC or CDP choline, things like T-creen. You know, a lot of these ingredients are kind of exciting. N-acetyl tyrosine. And then there's ingredients that aren't really DSHEA compliant, but you can get online. The race hams like piracetam, Noopept, those have a lot of cognitive benefits, and I've had some good success experimenting with those and seeing more productivity, you know, from my brain, feeling like my IQ has jumped, my focus has jumped, and therefore it's not just, you know, getting more work done, but there's certainly a mind-muscle connection that when you are more connected mentally, when you're in a better mental state, you're less distracted. Something like L-theanine is really good to help you kind of focus your brain by calming it down. You know, so those kinds of things really help in terms of being in the gym or playing your sport. You know, think about like when you're playing soccer, or you're playing football, if you're a quarterback, you know, all these kinds of things, like you need to process on a high level. And if you're a little cloudy, if you're tired, you know, mentally, you're not going to be processing on the same level. You could potentially get injured, you know, and the ability to perform at your highest level, whether it's in the office or on the field or in the gym, I think that has a lot of potential for most people. So I think that's a great area. And then these ingredients are also helpful for preventing, you know, some of the cognitive decline that happens as we age, with things like Alzheimer's or potential Parkinson's and some of these other conditions. And the other one that's a big one for me is that I'm using and I'm liking a lot. We need more data on, but there's certainly preliminary data that's interesting, is exogenous ketones. So the supplemental form of ketones, very interesting stuff. It's experiential for me, so I like them. I think, you know, you have to get the right dose in, maybe about 10 grams of BHB, and which is beta hydroxybutyrate, which is one of the key ketones. And it's extremely effective. I like that ingredient a lot. So for me,
that's a different podcast.
Yeah.
The whole podcast just talk about ketones and all of that stuff that's actually on the media. And talking about the media here, before we talk about where people can find you here, I have to ask you this question. It has nothing to do with supplements. What do you think about the coconut oil thing it's all over the media right now? I'm actually about to do a video right after this here about this topic of coconut oil. I just want to hear your quick take here into this topic.
So as far as human data, that isn't data from the 60s and 70s that's just correlative, there has never been a clear study showing cause and effect with saturated fat and heart disease. It does not happen. There is a correlation to saturated fat and heart disease on an epidemiological level, on a populational level, but that has to do more with processed foods that happen to contain saturated fat, but they also contain all these highly processed vegetable oils, these polyunsaturated fats that are pro-inflammatory. And they also contain a sugar or high glycemic carbohydrate, highly processed carbohydrate. And so and there's certainly things in there, these compounds in there, like we just talked about, like the sodium and the flavoring agents and all these things that make you overeat. And so is that correlated? Is processed food correlated to heart disease? Yes. Is saturated fat? No. How many animals out there that are eating saturated fat are getting morbidly obese, are getting heart attacks? It doesn't happen. It's processed food. And so, the American Heart Association points to, saturated fat raises LDL. That's true. But let's look at that. Is LDL bad? No, LDL isn't bad. It isn't a bad cholesterol. There is a form of LDL, if you were to do an NMR or a VAP test, that isn't typically done by a doctor, where you can actually look at the subfractions. And the small, dense LDL is correlated, oxidized LDL is correlated to heart disease. But like ketogenic dieting and eating saturated fat, for example, that raises LDL and cholesterol. But it raises large LDL, large fluffy particles that are actually correlated with improved mortality. So this is where doctors are often very confused, and other health practitioners are very confused. They don't understand cholesterol very well. LDL is not the bad cholesterol. Small, dense LDL is. And so it's very misunderstood. And, coconut oil and saturated fat, butter, whatever, those are correlated with better heart health. And higher cholesterol is actually correlated in studies with improved mortality. Lower cholesterol is correlated to worse mortality. I think statins is probably one of the biggest scams as far as drugs out there. It actually puts people more at risk for heart disease, not less at risk. So I get very frustrated with a very poor understanding of cholesterol, a very poor understanding of saturated fat. The Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics, that used to be the ADA, the American Dietetic Association, they've reversed their stance on fat, saturated fat, sodium, cholesterol. Because all these are really myths. What we're seeing now is processed foods, like the highly processed carbohydrate, like the processed vegetable oils like soybean, peanuts, canola. Those are ones that have issues and are pro-inflammatory. It's not saturated fat. It's not monounsaturated fat like olive oil and healthy fats like avocado. None of those have ever been the issue. And cholesterol in the diet almost has zero impact on cholesterol endogenously. Very little impact. All of it is
absolutely
completely misunderstood. And it's really sad. The American Heart Association is holding on to something that the rest of the world has moved on from, and they're just wrong.
So many hot topics here. We're going to bring you back here, Shawn, because we have no more time. So before you go, Shawn, where people can find you if they want to know more about your work, the best place to go?
Yeah, I appreciate it. And this has been a great podcast. So I have a website called zonehalo.com, ZONEHALO. And you can also find me on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, at Zone Halo as well. So I have a lot of content that I'm putting out there on biohacking, supplementation, ketogenic dieting, etc. So that's where they can find me.
Great. Shawn, thank you so much, man. It was a pleasure to get to know you personally like this, and I appreciate you coming to the show here to share some of your knowledge. We really appreciate it. I hope to bring you on to talk about other stuff. There is so many things here that I would like to share, but you'd spend the whole day here talking.
I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.
All right. Have a good one.
Okay. See ya.
Right. Thank you. I think we are good here.
Cool. It was nice to see someone say great podcast.